Welcome to the Spirit Soul series. And today I have a different guest. It's not Supriya Chechi. It's my uncle, Ramesh Mavan, and like we both share this very common, I guess, love for spirituality. So I was like thinking, it'd be a good idea if I can bring Ramesh Mavan onto the show to probably talk about some things about spirituality and what his views on various things are and stuff like that. So yeah, welcome to the show, Ramesh Maman. This is the second time. How is it like? You know, how does it feel?
No, thank you very much, Siddharth. I've been avidly following all your podcast, and I enjoy it because there are a lot of young people coming, talking. Also, people like Anil Uncle and whom I've been really wanting to hear. You know, and then your dad and his friends. So it's quite a good collection as far as I'm concerned. I enjoy listening to your podcast, and I have listened to Supriya Cheji also.
Hmm.
Of course, she seems to be very much deep, but I am not a scholar or any such thing.
Hmm.
But certainly, I have a point of view, sometimes very strong point of view, and so
Hmm.
maybe we will have a talk. But you must ask the questions because I am not a preacher or any such kind of stuff.
I
So
wanted to
you
ask
ask
you.
me the
So like,
questions, yeah.
have you So that is the first question I'd like to ask. Like, have you read the Bhagavad Gita, like the full thing, or have you read it the whole thing at least once or something?
Yes, I've
Um.
not only read the Bhagavad Gita. I have got. If you go to my channel and put 30 important summary of the Bhagavad Gita, 30 important slogans,
Hmm.
slokas across the thing. I have translated it, and it is my own translation.
Ah.
I didn't lift it from any other interpretation. So you have it there. Bhagavad Gita certainly, it's a most important Hindu text,
Hmm.
but my only issue with the Bhagavad Gita, everybody talks about it. It is it sometimes people miss out the context of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a very important, complex, you can say, subject or itihasa as they call it. What happened? It's not history. I really do not know what this itihasa means. One has to explore to understand it. But sometimes I have some at the same time some big doubts about it.
Hmm.
So maybe you can ask this next time to your Supriya Chechi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is there this war? You know,
Huh.
why should there be a brother fighting and killing and other things when
Hmm.
Hinduism actually talks about
Peace and
ahimsa, peace? It
peace
is never
and
about
non-violence.
war. Okay,
Hmm.
and then Mahabharata is full of war, gory details of war, and
Hmm.
even Ramayana is all about war. So what is this war? Whom are you killing? Are you really going and killing people?
Hmm.
And I have a theory on that. My theory is that nobody is getting killed.
Oh,
This is
that's
only
interesting.
nobody is getting killed. It's only an inner war between you and
Oh, yeah.
your
Okay.
dark
Hmm.
side. It is
Hmm.
between it is within one guy.
Hmm.
So there is this Kauravas who are these dark forces within you, and Pandavas who are the good forces within you, and then there is the Pandavas are aligned to Krishna. That means you are listening to your inner voice of your true self,
Hmm.
and then you get all the answers of life.
Hmm.
Otherwise, then Krishna is saying, okay, now you go and kill all your people who are usurpers. That tendencies you must eliminate. Don't feel any
Hmm.
doubt they are anywhere going to go. Something like that. Even the Ramayana also, if you ask me, Rama is within you, Ravana is within you. Everybody has got that ego, everybody has got the goodness. So this is a fight between these
Hmm.
two this thing. So otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So much of
Yeah.
gory death and whatnot.
But I think they had to explain it like that because people wouldn't understand it if you explain, if you tell them like it's a battle within your mind and all that. I don't think people would be able to understand it so easily. So you have to kind of explain it in a story format, and then only people will get that idea that okay, it's like a battle within yourself. It's not like you're trying to all the stuff that people are trying to talk about, even the conversation that Arjuna has with Krishna also in the battlefield. It's like it's more of Arjuna trying to understand in his mind, like, how do I, like, how do I kill the people that are part of my family? It doesn't make any sense. Like, how do I do this? And Krishna is trying to tell him, like, trying to reason out with him, trying to give him all kinds of, tell him that, it's your duty, it's your dharma, you were born as something like this, and you have to be able to, accept that, if you walk away from what you are supposed to do, then you will have to face the consequences of it. And then he explains to him the whole idea of karma and the importance of it, and that it's not, and that this life that you are living right now is linked to all kinds of past lives, and the actions of that are affecting what is happening right now. So I think, like, when you listen to all of that, then you understand that, I mean, then obviously the ultimate truth that he tells Arjuna is that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you know, you're the soul, and the soul is connected to, the ultimate soul, or the Paramatma. And so you can't be attached to these things of, like, family or money or wealth and all these things. You can't be attached to it. You have to fight, you have to stand up for what is right and what is dharma and what is justice. So, until he understands that fully, like, he's always in doubt about what he's supposed to do. So once he understands that,
I
he's,
agree on
yeah,
one thing, but my only
uh,
main question is why say fight and kill?
uh,
Instead of that, you can say reform. Okay. And that is what, if you are your family, you will go and say, you reason out with them, reform them, something like that, or you accept it, they will change a little later. This is what happens in real life.
mm,
So here I have a feeling, okay, they have expressed all the theory of Hinduism very well in Bhagavad Gita, no doubt about that. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita, I started reading it very late in life,
mm,
much later. When I was a student, when I was young, my father's favorite story was Ramayana, you
mm.
know, because very easy to understand. He was a nice king, good, nice king. He was a perfect
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Suddenly, he was about to become king. Then one Manthara, the Ramayana. There was
Yeah, I know the, yeah, I know, I
one
know. Yeah,
crooked
yeah.
lady comes and says something, and then he got banished.
Mm,
So that was a easy to understand story.
mm.
But at the end of it, I used to ask my dad, "But why monkey? Who's a real hero of this?" And at those days, when I was small, my dad in Trivandrum, I don't know whether your dad knows, your dad used to go to this temple I'm talking about.
Mm,
That basically it's about it is a Hanuman temple
mm,
in in Trivandrum. I don't know whether you've been to Trivandrum. There's a Palayam,
mm.
one area called Palayam,
I've not
if
been
you
there, but
remember.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've
much, yeah.
must have heard. Yeah.
So there is a church. There are two churches. There is
Mm.
a mosque, and there is this Hanuman temple. It used to be, and this was in the cantonment area of where the army was. So my
Uh-huh.
father used to tell me the story, and the Hanuman. Now the Hanuman temple is very big there. But I
Mm,
used to ask, tell me why? Because next to it was a zoo, and in the zoo there were all kinds of, uh, you know, monkeys and baboons and all those things. So I used to ask my father. I was a small kid at that time. Is this God Hanuman? Please explain to me. Actually, my father couldn't explain, and I was not sad. I was a small kid. But I always had this thing in my mind, what is
mm,
this? Why this monkey? And not only
mm,
that, you've got all kinds of
mm,
vehicles of God. There's a mice, there is a tiger,
mm,
these kind of things. Then are they really that, or what are they? So these
mm.
kind of things puzzled me throughout my life. So with the result that I became wedded to science.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Okay, I said that unless
Uh,
there is some science in this, it doesn't make any
then
sense.
it's, yeah. Yeah, even
So
I
this
was, even
question,
even I was like that when I was young also. I also used to be like, I used to ask these questions and I'd be like, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. And I didn't get into science, but I was like, it didn't make any sense though. So I was like more interested in other things when I was growing up. But then I guess that question comes when you are in, like, when you are like in such a low position in your life.
yeah, yeah,
Suddenly,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
ask
yeah,
that
yeah.
question, like, okay, then yeah, okay, I need to ask deeper
You have
questions
to
and all
become an
stuff.
Arjuna to slowly start.
Yeah.
You have to become an Arjuna
Yeah,
when
you
you
suddenly
ask this
you
question.
start,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think what one thing was interesting was that when I'm speaking to Supriya Chechi, she said that if you have suddenly like picked up on spirituality, like at this time, it means that in your past life you were also spiritually active, and so but for some reason, like it didn't come up to you so fast now. It's taking some time to come to you after some time in your life. So it's like that's how karma works essentially. You pick it up from where you left off in your previous life. Now I
Yeah,
don't know, it's very difficult to like prove that, but then at the same time it makes a lot of sense. Like if you think
yeah,
about karma, if you think about karma, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it in that way. So I found that very interesting. And so and so because I kind of I understand karma, and karma is like from it's not easy to understand, but from what I've understood so far of it is like every action that you do, like if a human being can't do anything without action, and action essentially is karma.
yes,
So the so it has to be the case that if there must have been a previous life, otherwise how do you just suddenly get born into this earth and you are a certain way and you think a certain in a certain kind of way or something like that? There has to be something, there must have been some kind of action in the previous life to have given you this thing, right? So those things, like those are still answers that is very difficult to prove, but it's no other way but to like just believe in that, even if science
yeah.
is not something that
I
can like
agree.
kind
I
of
agree. So science has got limitations. Science has got earlier when I was small, there used to be always atom, neutron, electron, and all. Then there are millions of other particles smaller than the electron.
hmm,
So science also is always discovering itself. There are
hmm,
particles is coming in. So it's not that science has got answer for everything, but still some basic logic has to be there. Now I've resolved actually my Hanuman question
how
because I must tell you who is Hanuman. I
hmm.
must give you a summary. Bhagavad Gita is too complex to
I
attempt.
like
No, but
before you start, I'll tell you Hanuman is like my favorite. He's
yes,
like, yeah, I have him. I bought a statue of Hanuman, and he's there
yes,
in the room, and he's the like, so he's the god that I keep thinking about, and every day I keep listening to the Hanuman Chalisa every day. So he's like
yeah.
my favorite. Yeah. So continue,
Sankat
continue.
Mochan. Have you listened to Sankat
Yeah, yeah.
Mochan?
Sankat
Yeah.
Mochan. Yeah. I would say.
Yeah. So I think it's very good. In fact, this my question throughout my life has been about Hanuman, and I have also now understood and I'm now in comfort with the monkey like Hanuman opening
Mm.
his heart and seeing Rama inside.
Yeah,
So what is the
yeah,
meaning of it?
mm,
And he's always he's a very powerful chap. He's the most powerful, one of the most
yeah.
powerful person in the Ramayana. He can fly, he can do anything.
Bravery and confidence and
Everything,
courage.
everything.
Yeah.
He is action, man of action, but he won't act
Mm.
unless Rama or somebody
Rama's, yeah.
of the correct power tells him to do. Okay. So Hanuman is a power of devotion within you. Now, for
Mm.
example, now you have started your journey, okay, of your podcasting or independent media person.
Yeah,
Okay, it's great. I don't know.
yeah.
I really appreciate it, because you're taking
Yeah.
a lot of trouble because I've also, it's not that easy to podcast, you have to buy these things, you have to learn. I'm sure Papa told me that before you started all these things, you were doing a lot of research and trying to understand
Mm.
how to tape and how to do this, listen to so many things, how to ask the questions. So that devotion is Hanuman. And
Mm.
sometimes it is low, small. Sometimes it is big. You then you spring into action and you do also that devotional power is the biggest thing in Ramayana. And why is he biggest? Why has he has to kick into action? Because he is aligned to Rama, which means the goodness within you.
Yeah.
Okay, Rama is nothing but the goodness within you. Ravana is the dark forces within you, the egoistic fellow within you. So he goes and helps Rama to annihilate and recover Sita. And
Mm.
who is Sita? Sita is the faith, inherent faith in your goodness within you.
Mm.
So there is in Ramayana there is one chapter called Sundarakanda. So how I read it is when I read it, it is about faith, that is Sita, talking to devotion, who is Hanuman.
Mm.
And it is, if you just knock off Sita and Rama and put in its place, faith talking to devotion.
Mm.
And it is unbelievable, that story. And
That
then now I have no issue because anything I say, I will. That's why this war on this Bhagavad Gita, that way,
mm,
without the Mahabharat context, you can take the Bhagavad Gita, no problem, because it's telling you all what you said is
yeah.
all correct. That is a theory, but still it is on the bedrock of a war. What is this war?
Mm.
And he's
So
saying
that
you
like
go kill this fellow. So I have a problem with that, because I
mm,
cannot accept it like that.
mm.
But the
So
other one is no, okay. War in Sri Lanka was very. Sri Lanka is also. I don't think it is Sri Lanka or Sinhalese people. It is some story. People. I don't know how
yeah,
that
but
thing came.
then now Ramayana has become a kind of a little bit controversial now in when it comes to I mean in the sense like because nowadays I don't know why, but then it's like some people view it as like maybe a kind of I don't know, like maybe like north versus south or something like that. I don't know whether that, because it's sort of it's it's kind of tainted that whole thing a bit, and it's not just some kind of not nice, like it's just didn't feel nice for a bit. But yeah, the story is nice. And like you'll see a lot of people, like especially like in Sri Lanka and all that, saying yeah, we are like they like they kind of own up to the whole Ravana thing, like we are
They
the
like to
people of
be Ravana.
yeah. But
Yeah.
then I did some research on this and I found that Ravana is actually a person born in North India. He was born
No,
in
no, no.
North
See,
India.
no, no, no. I don't think that is not the issue. Ravan was a
Yeah.
very good, talented guy. And
Hmm.
he is not dark with a mustache like what Ramanand Sagar shows him in
Hmm.
Ramayana. It is not like that. He is a very handsome chap, very
Hmm.
attractive, very talented. And he's never, if you read I've read the Valmiki Ramayana inside out.
Hmm.
And it is not like that at all. And but what was his problem? He never used to accept Ram. So his wife says, please, Mandodari says, you please accept Ram because there's something in him. And don't take his
Hmm.
wife and keep her there. And he couldn't possess Sita also. So
Hmm.
actually, he was and then many people advised him, please don't, Vibhishan and all advised him, you don't usurp somebody's wife. So
Hmm.
this fellow was a bad doer.
Hmm.
So, and he was a born loser. Rama came in to finish him only. And with the help of Hanuman and all these things.
Hmm.
Then there are certain things in the Ramayana which you cannot even accept.
Hmm.
I'm basically trained for naval architecture. Okay,
Hmm.
also ships.
Yeah.
Why do ships float?
Because of that design on the bottom that gives that air in between the ship, like that part, right? I don't know what's called, but
It is called buoyancy.
buoyancy. I mean, yeah,
Buoyancy.
buoyancy.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, buoyancy is a
Huh.
technical term,
Hmm.
which means it will float because there's an upward force of buoyancy.
Hmm.
It's a
Buoyancy.
scientific principle.
Hmm.
So a stone can never float.
Hmm.
A stone cannot float.
Yeah, but it floats in that.
Okay.
But it says it's floating there in that.
But then the story is that Rama and his whole Vanaras people, they know they want to cross it, go to Lanka,
Hmm.
and they are looking, and suddenly they get an idea. Let us make a bridge,
Hmm.
and they'll put some stones on the water and write Rama on that,
Hmm.
and then the stone floats,
Hmm.
and then they walk across. So, because me with my scientific thing, I can never accept it as truth. Then at the same time, they say Ramayana is truth. It is itihasa. It means this is the way it happened.
Hmm.
Which means there was a time when Rama and his people were searching for faith, which is
Hmm.
Sita, and wanting to go and recover it from Lanka. Lanka is the bad fellow has taken away and gone. Your ego has usurped your faith.
Hmm.
Okay, you become egoistic. So Rama is coming to recover it, and then they were in a situation like Arjuna. They didn't know what to do, but you got to go there. So the story says the context is a despondent situation like Arjuna is facing,
Hmm.
and then what the stone in your life. See, in modern management thing, they'll say remove the stones in your shoe. Means if you have some problems in your organization, these are stones in your shoe. You remove it because it will not help you walk.
Hmm.
Similar concept. There are these stones. But these stones can be removed if you chant Rama Rama. In one of your speeches, one of your talk, I think you said when you chant, when you are meditating, you chant the mantra
Yeah,
and then
Hare
you do
Krishna.
something else. Hare Krishna mantra.
Uh,
Same
mm.
thing. They are saying that chant Rama, Rama, Rama when you're in deep trouble, and that's all. Then you will cross and you will go forward. Though Krishna gave the biggest complicated talk to Arjuna, this is nothing. Just say chant Rama, 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 then your stones will be removed, you will go to your path.
But I
I
think
think that is the only
hmm,
interpretation. I can't accept that
hmm.
stone will float by saying writing
Yeah, yeah.
Rama
I
there.
mean, there are a lot of things. If you go very deep into Hinduism, a lot of things will not make any sense. And I've heard
No,
like a
no,
lot of
no. But with my interpretation, it's making
uh,
sense. You're
uh,
in life, you have a problem. You do not know whether you'll go forward. So you have got a lot of obstacles in your life. You will just chant Ram, Ram, Rama, and then that's it.
hmm.
You will move forward. Things will work for you. You must work. You must try to build the bridge and move. You
I
can't
think
sit around.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think like when you listen to Mahabharata or Ramayana, I think it's up to you to decide like or interpret like how it affects you in your life. Like because I think every person will have like a
Yes.
different every person has like a different like I think like one thing I found interesting is that you listen to the Mahabharata, no, you'll find that every character in the Mahabharata, you've been every character in the Mahabharata at least once in your life. Like you've been Duryodhan at least once. Once
Yeah,
you've been
yeah,
Duryodhan at some point in your life, you've been that. You've been
yeah.
Arjuna also, but you've been Bhima. You've been all these different characters in your life. You've been some of the female characters also who've
Yes,
acted like in some different ways. And even in Ramayana also, that is the one thing I would say that's different Ramayana because it doesn't have that many characters than Mahabharat. Mahabharat has a little bit more characters, but Ramayana also like you kind of know that okay, you've been like Hanuman, you've been like Ram, you've been like Lakshman, you've been like Sita or something. You've been all these characters. That's why you can relate to all these characters very easily. And
yes,
that's why when they do some things, it may seem like very illogical, but then for some reason you can relate to them. And because you
yes,
relate to them, it's like okay, it does make some sense to you because because it relates to you. And this is something that I didn't understand a long time back. I didn't understand completely, but now I've learned to like accept it, just accept
yeah.
it for what it is and not have to think too much about maybe the illogical fallacies of certain aspects of it and all that stuff. Yeah.
No, now, for instance, Hanuman, back to Hanuman, you got also
Hanuman.
Hanuman
Yeah,
temple.
yeah, yeah. In
Because
Cochin,
now, earlier,
there's a
Cochin,
yeah,
there's a Hanuman
yeah,
temple. I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
with your dad
Hmm,
there.
hmm,
But then, you see, you go and do a Vadamala, for
hmm,
instance, and or you go and do some specific puja for Hanuman. Earlier, I used to have a lot of doubts because I used to think, what is the meaning of all these things? After I realized that actually it is your own devotion you are trying to
trying to put on
hone,
hone. Yeah.
hone. Now, because Balima goes to every temple, now I follow her. No problem. My questioning and all will be in my back. But she will lead it. She will do whatever she has to do. So I will go with her to any temple. Now I'll follow her and go. And then I keep thinking and getting some answers myself. But as you rightly said, if you can, the younger generation of people like you and me, who are too more scientific than maybe your mother and other ladies, maybe they're not that questioning. We are
Hmm,
very questioning, and then we have been little bit logical thinking a little bit too much, which is
hmm,
not necessary. That is why you get attracted to Bhagavad Gita, but still I have this big issue of this war. What is
hmm.
this war and why are you asking to fight and kill
Yeah,
your
that
uncle
also
and all
there.
that stuff. I wouldn't want you to come
Like
and
it's something that it's
kill me.
something it's taking something to an extreme, like it's taking it
Extreme.
to an
Yeah.
extreme point, like where like most people, like even if you think about it, like Mahabharata was composed by sage Vyasa, no,
Yeah, yeah.
in probably like at a time when wars and people
Correct.
fought wars and people and maybe there must have been a situation, there must have been a war where this kind of scenario must have taken place where it must have been very similar, like where one family takes control of the kingdom from another family, and then now with help of other people they have like amassed an army and they're fighting. So it must have been actually a true incident, and he must have taken that small thing, and he must have like expanded it and made it into like some kind of God is coming here and trying
Yeah.
to tell
See,
people
this
and all that
is
stuff.
Mahabharata is dated 3000 BC.
Hmm.
Mahabharat's date. And Ramayana is nowadays they're saying it is 12,000 BC. Ramayana
Ramayana is
was written.
before Mahabharata. Ramayana was before
Much
Mahabharata.
before.
Yeah, yeah, much
Much before.
before. Yeah, yeah. Because
At that time,
Hanuman appears in Mahabharata. No, Hanuman is in the
yes,
Mahabharata where Bhima's like towards the end of Mahabharata. Bhima walks. He's in the forest, and Bhima just suddenly sees this monkey sitting over there and all that stuff. And then
yeah.
that episode is there. No, so then yeah,
Episode, yeah.
so it's much before that.
So what I'm trying to say is that this story has been in India since ages.
Hmm.
Okay, nobody questioned it. But then came the conquest from the West, India. India got
Hmm.
both by mainly by
British
the Abrahamic religion from the
colonialism. Yeah.
no, before the colonialism, because the Muslims came.
Huh.
They are the
The
first people, but they
Mughals, the
only came
Mughals
to
and all.
North India, Mughals and all. They only
Hmm.
came to North India. They didn't come to South India much. And in the North India, they came, they conquered them, but they never questioned much. But they maybe just annihilated because they didn't. They said kafir and then killed all the and demolished all the temples. They didn't try to convert you.
Hmm.
But the colonialists were not like that. Colonialists had a historical religion that
Hmm.
the world started just when Jesus was born or something like that. In 7 days he created. They have a story to defend. And they said this is true. While we have got monkey and all untrue stories, and I think we couldn't defend it. And the colonial people came during the scientific era, and we couldn't defend it. What is this story about? You know, so now you and me are discussing this, saying that okay, this is an allegorical story, and this means like this, and when it says it means it is forever, it lasted. We are telling a different narrative,
Hmm.
and now a lot of actually Western people are also accepting it. Okay, this could be true. There is a hidden meaning in these things. There is a hidden narrative. These characters can be within you. The world has now become ripe to understand these things, but it has been written by great sages many years back. So we are all part of this because I don't think my father's generation ever asked this question.
Hmm.
Never asked this question. And you and me now you're talking about all these
I
things
think,
and not feeling that
mm, I
Ramayana, if you question Rama,
yeah,
the heaven will fall on your head.
yeah.
We don't
I
have such
think
a
what
fear
what you
also.
said what you said about technology is very important because technology actually, in a weird way, has actually helped people to come back to the maybe the teachings of the Ramayana and Mahabharata in some ways because I
Yes.
think it's become the access of these stories are so widespread that, like, for instance, like you can see now people in America or Western countries just like easily accepting that whatever is said in the Mahabharata, whatever is said in like the Ramayana is true, and they can in some way they don't have this barrier that sometimes we create. We kind of think that we assume that that these characters were came from our region of our part of the world, and they don't have that bad, they don't even see that, they just see they look at the stories and they think of it as being so fantastic, and they see themselves as the characters also. So it's like when you see that, you have a totally different picture of what the Mahabharata and Ramayana actually is there, because it's not about which region you come from, which language you speak, how you look or whatever. It's about just that human connection that even when you read the Mahabharata, then you get an understanding that okay, he's not talking about just Indians. The Krishna not
Yeah, yeah,
talking about only Indians or only Hindus. He's referring to the whole world. Like, he's referring
yeah,
to all human beings. But that you won't get because if you're an Indian and you're a Hindu, no, then you'll only think he's talking about the
yeah,
Indian and
yeah.
Hindu. You don't think he's talking about anybody else. And
And then all the monkeys are from South India
South India,
because
tropical.
and all the what demons with the mustache and all are from
Ah.
Tamil Nadu or Sri Lanka or wherever. So this is all. This is also. I don't think in the original Ramayana he has painted any such picture like that. This picture was all done by some artist. So that
I
is how
think
it
it's
became very political.
I think it's become over the years like a kind of justification, for the
Yes.
North Indian culture parties and political parties and all that stuff to kind of say that how great they are, how like everything sprung from it. I mean, you can't deny the fact that most of Hindus, like all of Hinduism, it came from there. It came from the north.
Not
Hinduism,
true.
Buddhism, not all, I
Agastya,
mean most of it.
Agastya.
Most of it,
No,
yeah.
no, 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 not true. Not true at all.
Yeah.
Because now in Tamil Nadu, I don't know how much you are aware of, there are many, many sites they have uncovered recently.
Recently, yeah, that
They
recently
are
there
all
was that.
from BC, 3000 BC, as much as when the what is that, Indus Valley civilization was there was a civilization also in the south. So it is not that south was all full of monkeys and other things. That's not
So
true.
does that put to bed that notion of that Aryan versus Dravidian sort of thing then?
See, this Aryan thing is a colonial construct. It was done because the Western fellows, when they came to rule India, they said that Hinduism was bought by the Aryan. Now that Aryan theory is completely discredited.
Hmm.
It doesn't say, and this Dravidian as a different thing. It is Shankaracharya who first used the word Dravidian because he went for an argument in Banaras with
One,
the Buddhist.
okay.
Vandana Mishra or something, some Buddhist and some
Mandan
other,
Mishra, Uma
Mandan Mishra
Bharati,
or something. Yeah.
Uma Bharati.
And then you know what he did? He said, "Who are you?" They asked him. He said that I am from the three, where the land of the three sides sea. Dravida. Dravida means there are three seas, the three sides there is sea, South India, southern peninsula India. I am from there. He went to North India to have this thing and he defeated all of them in the this thing, Shankaracharya's time. So that is the first time a word Dravidian is there. Then what happened? The British tried to use this and wedge a divide between the north and the south and all those things. Then of course it became too complicated. And now in Tamil Nadu, what is the Dravidian party? It's all based on this divisive politics. That's why Modi never gets a vote here.
But yeah, so that's the
That's a political part of it, So you
Yeah.
can't diverse the political part of it.
Yeah, that's there. So the thing is like that. I think now people are going to the other extreme, like especially maybe I don't know in Tamil Nadu or something, where people are trying to say that our culture is also 3,200 years old, and it's also very old and all that
No,
stuff.
it is.
There's no need to like maybe I
There's no
don't know.
need. There's no. You see,
Hmm.
here the biggest this thing. I want to translate it.
Hmm.
Tirukkural. There is one poet called Tirukkural.
Hmm.
They accept him as saying that he is the true Tamil culture, and very good aphorisms he has got. And he is very ancient, very very ancient. But if you look at it, it is absolutely consistent with every other Vedic this thing. He is not saying anything new. He's saying exactly the same thing, but very practical stuff. So, which means the root of the Tamil culture, for that matter, I am now convinced after living in Tamil Nadu for a long time, that Tamil and the Malayali base culture is the same.
Yeah, that I accept. Yeah.
But we had some Sanskrit connection little later. Maybe people came from Karnataka or Maharashtra into and migrated here. So we got some mix. But
So
otherwise,
I
the
actually
base
did,
culture is
yeah,
Tamil.
I actually did
Yeah,
some research on this, and I found that people, when this Tamil language, right, is supposed to be the oldest language in the world,
correct,
and that
correct.
language, but people say that that it originated somewhere in the southwestern part of Iran, and from there the people went down, and as they went down, the first language to separate and form its own separate language from Tamil was Telugu. Then went Kannada, and and for a long time the Malayali and the Tamilian people spoke the same language, which is basically Tamil only. Then Malayalam was the last south was the last of the languages to separate from Tamil and form its own distinct language and all that stuff. And then Kerala had its own history where people from the Arab world and all that kept coming in, and there were a lot of mixed people. Then the Arab words started getting infused. There's mixture of Arab words, Portuguese words, Spanish words, Hebrew, all all kinds of words of that mixed in Malayalam itself. So
Mhm.
it's now become very distinct from Tamil, but Tamil is probably the oldest language that has like that sort of like maintained its authenticity from that time till now. You know,
I agree. I
to a
agree.
large extent, yeah.
I'm sure that is the truth. But it is not a different culture or anything like that. It is not a different because there is this Kamba Ramayana. I don't know whether you've heard about. There are millions
Skandaraman,
of versions of
Kamba,
Kambar. Like in
Kambar.
Kerala, there is another Adhyatma Ramayana. Eഴുத்தச்சன் has written another Ramayana. There are so many Ramayanas. Valmiki Ramayana is the original. So in Kamba Ramayana, it is so eloquently written, and all this, they didn't differentiate whether it's south or north or nothing like that. It is not Aryan, nothing. It is much before the British came.
Hmm.
Kamba Ramayana is eloquent. Very only thing is where they show sometimes Rama in slightly bad light. They
Hmm.
will slightly, because there are some things in the Ramayana, some very difficult to, like everybody says, how did Rama banish Sita? This is one big
Hmm.
problem. How did he hide and kill Vali? There are some incongruities like we have in
Yeah.
Mahabharata.
Yeah.
Same thing is there in Ramayana also. That these people slightly, because they found it's a little difficult to accept it.
There are a lot
Such
of
a perfect,
loopholes.
yeah,
A lot of loopholes are there, and
yeah. Now the question is, are they loopholes or are
hmm.
they actually something else, which is a fact?
Hmm.
Because these people can't be saying this is the truth, this is what happened. Maybe there's an underlying depth of another level of story which we don't know. Is yet to
Possibly.
be uncovered. It will come,
But
I'm sure. But now there are so many people interpreting all these things. There is one girl recently written a book. Maybe I'll strongly recommend you have a look at it. Mahabharat Unraveled. One lady called Ami. She's also in YouTube. Ami Ganantra, something like that. She's got a young. She's an MBA and highly educated like us. She knows Sanskrit, and I think she's got some point of view. And
Wonderful.
she's bringing out a very nice. Mahabharata. If you're interested, she also talks about Bhagavad Gita. So there are
Hmm.
many such people thinking, young generation, who are like us, modern, confused, and and living. So
I
my
think.
take on
Hmm.
finally, this is how I resolved my all these issues. I've resolved it. Actually, I have no problem with Hanuman or any war or anything. It's okay. But my issue is, what do you do with this knowledge of spirituality?
Like you have to take what is important mostly for you and keep it. Otherwise, you have to. And what are the things that are not, that you feel like is like not important to you? You'll have to. You can't take it in a sense. In that sense, I feel like, for instance, like if you understand like what is, if you take the story of Ram, if you take the story of Ramayana, for example, the story is about this prince from Ayodhya. Initially the background of the Ramayana is like the demons were like, harassing the sages. They were disturbing order in the world, and the sages prayed to Vishnu, saying that, we need your help. And so then Rama came as the incarnation as Vishnu, and then he was born in Ayodhya, and he grew up there, and he did all these things. So one thing you can learn from that, the first thing you can learn from that is, okay, whenever something bad happens, you should always, like, stand up against it. That you stand up against bad things happening. That's very important. Then, like when, Sita gets kidnapped, stand up for the weak, or stand up for the people that can't fight or that can't do things like that. Doesn't come easily to them. Then, like, and then also, like, for you're the if you're then another thing is, like, Ram being this prince of Ayodhya and stuff, he's also like the incarnation of Vishnu, but he still needs help. He needs an army of monkeys to help him defeat Ravan. He still needs help from people around him. That is also very important. You still need help. No matter how powerful you are, you still need help from the people around you. You still need, so your ego has to always remain in check all the time. So that is something that is very important that you need to learn. Then, like, I, I mean, those are the basic things that you can learn. And also the fact is that one important thing that Ramayana does, I think, better than Mahabharata is, like, give this message of, like, that for me personally, I've, like, that animals are very important. Like, the help that Ram gets from monkeys, from bears, from all these things, they're like, animals are very important also. They also helped fight the evil, in that sense. They were not like some, the bystanders. And, like, you see like Jatayu and all stuff, he's like, he's fought against Ravan. You see all the animals on, also part of the whole thing. So I think that is something, like, so those things you can take from the Ramayana and be like, okay, this is all good. But, things like what we mentioned about, maybe like, the stone or the bridge or the significance of that, that is like up to you to decide, like, whether you want to believe in that or not, it's fine. But I think the main messages, I think, you can take, like what I just said. And similarly in the Mahabharata also many aspects of it that also, that you can say, that for instance, like brotherhood, family, uh you know like for instance Yudhishthira's like role in the case of being, like, despite all negative things happening in for the Pandavas, Yudhishthira continued to maintain the righteousness, and you can call that naivety also. But if you think about it, it's because of that is the reason why the Pandavas never, like, they, every time they were stuck, they always found a solution. They were never like, they always had the upper hand because Yudhishthira was like the lead. He was the brains. He was the person that kept everybody calm when everything was else was going completely haywire. Like, people always attribute the Gita to Arjuna when they say that Arjuna was got the teaching or whatever. But the Pandavas are nothing without Yudhishthira. There's nothing about, there's nothing, the Pandavas are nothing about without him. So it's important to like maintain that sense of calmness in times of, when everybody is like, telling you this that, like, what are you doing, like, how can you just take it like this, Bhima's like, I'm the strongest person in the world, I'll defeat all these people very fast, like, why are you waiting for all this now? So then you just like, we can't do that, and so they kind of assert this thing that, why is he thinking like a Brahmin when he's a Kshatriya, for instance, what is this thing, like, he's a Kshatriya. He's supposed to fight. So then, but because he's the son of Dharma and all that stuff, he can't do that. So I mean, these things, these are things that, they're very important, and I guess those things of like fighting for justice, fighting for what is right, and then I think one of the biggest things in the Mahabharata, that which most of the Mahabharata, the essential thing comes from the Gita. The Gita teaches you the essential thing, which is that,
No, no, but there is another deadly, in Shanti Parva, there is a
Hmm.
talk between Yudhishthira and Bhishma.
Huh.
It is one deadly, it's about leadership.
Oh,
I
I've never
forget
heard that. I've never
yeah,
heard that.
but the thing is, the problem is because this is nice in Bhagavad Gita has become the only thing. There are so many, there are at least 5 Gitas within the Mahabharata.
Hmm.
If you go into that, that is why I said this. Ami, she has actually put all these things there in that book.
Hmm.
What all are the, then there is the Yaksha Prashna or something where Yudhishthira has asked some questions, in a pond. All amazing stuff. But I agree with you. It is for us to derive from it the lessons. Because in India, and accept certain things. It is not my way or the highway approach. I think Hinduism doesn't talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
That is why, like for example, somebody was telling the other day that, Shiva is sitting on with Ganesha on his lap,
Hmm.
and Shiva's snake is there on his neck, and on Ganesha there's a mice. Okay. Huh? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Will they remain like peaceful?
Yeah, that's true.
Huh?
How do you remain peaceful if you're on top of a mice? Like, it's so difficult.
Yeah. So, but that is Hinduism.
Yeah,
And that's how gods.
yeah.
So gods, through their gods, the snake is also living in harmony with the mice. The
Also, I
same
think
thing.
also one thing is like, I think the person who wrote all this was like probably a very good comedian because he understood, like, the humor and everything, like,
They are all
Yeah.
extra. I think they're aliens. They are some not normal people. You cannot think about such things. It's not only comedy, it's so many things. But with the result, India is one country. It's only, I don't think India was a violent country at all. We sailed the oceans, we went to Cambodia, we went to
Hmm.
Indonesia, we went everywhere. I don't think we went and converted. We just told these stories, people liked it, they adapted it themselves. We were the most peaceful country. Till these people with the desert thinkers, we are forest dwellers. Hinduism came from the forest. As somebody was explaining the difference between Western thinking, most of these Western, culture came from the deserts. So
Hmm.
they were scarcity driven, while we were plenty driven. We are all in like snake and the mice. We are in peace with ourselves. So there's enough for everybody. But though they come from a place where there's not enough for people, so they want to plunder and kill. So there's a fundamental difference between the makeup of these Western people and us. And we were
Western,
the
Eastern.
richest. Yeah, Western and Eastern, because the whole of East is influenced by India. Then
Mm.
Buddhism came later. China was also, I don't know whether you are aware, there is this, I forget his name, he was a Pallava king who established the Shaolin temple, Kung Fu temple in
Bodhidharma. No.
Bodhidharma, correct.
Bodhidharma.
Bodhidharma, you're
Okay.
right. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's a Pallava prince who went and taught the Chinese the art of kung fu or whatever I think in India, South it is called
Kale,
Kalaripayat
Kalaripayattu.
or Silambam. There is another art here
Tamil
called
Nadu, it's
Silambam.
Salem. Yeah.
Silambam, but more or less same. But it was this guy who went to China. So China accepted Indians. That is why they say that when Ziping came here, he wanted to have it in Mahabalipuram because of that connection. He also knows about it.
Oh. But there's
This is
one
all in
very
600 AD.
But
Yeah.
there's one very interesting story with Bodhidharma. I don't know whether it's with Bodhidharma because many sages went from South India and went to other parts of the other parts of the world in Asia and all that to
Yeah.
kind of talk about this. So one of I don't know if it was Bodhidharma, one of the sages, but they went to China and there was this very famous general in China. I don't remember his name, but like he heard that this brilliant sage from India was coming, and he asked him, I want to be a student and all that stuff. And so the sage from India said, like, "No, I'm not going to accept you because, look at you, you're just like a general. You want to kill everybody and all that stuff. You're just a violent person. And, let just get out of here. Let me go and meditate in peace." This is what the Indian sage told this Chinese guy. So the Chinese guy, was very adamant. He didn't want to give up. So he just like, for 10 years, he would like, he would just continuously ask the sage, somehow you try. But the sage always rejected him. So I don't know what the story goes, but then one day, like the sage said, if you want me to accept you as a student, show me how loyal and disciplined you are. Cut your hand and then tell me if they cut your hand and show me that you'll be my student. The first order is to cut your hand, and this guy cuts his hand. And ever since that point, that general, I think, became one of the most greatest sages in China. I don't know, forgot his name, but he became one of the greatest sages in China. Studied under this Indian master and all stuff. And he's the reason why all Chinese they put this one hand because one hand was cut. So
Oh, I didn't
so
know
he
this.
has,
Okay.
yeah, there's that story also. I don't know, but I had heard this from one of Sadhguru's talks, I
Okay.
guess. So he had talked about this. So it's very interesting, like, the fact, like, how much of influence has gone to East Asia and Southeast Asia when it comes to this kind of stuff is even like the fact that, in Korea and all, they believe that all the Koreans with the name Kim, no,
Hmm.
there are some Koreans that have the word name Kim. So there's
Yeah,
this
most of
thing
them.
like, yeah. So all of the so what happened was there was a long time ago there was this what do you say, I think there was this princess from India. Okay, one Ayodhya princess or something like that. She was sent as a sort of marriage this thing to a Korean man, a king or something like that. And she was called Kim, and her child was called Kim. So the thing is, like, a lot of Koreans attribute that name to like Ayodhya. So they kind of like, what do you say, have this connection. So even now, if you see a lot of Korean people, they like, they pay like a lot of respect to, like that tradition, that princess coming from that kingdom in Ayodhya and all that stuff. That is there. And then even in Japan also, there was like some other sage, very famous sage from Japan, again from South India only, I think. He went to Japan and then he found his way there, and he spread, I think, he spread like what is considered today like, Japanese version of, let's say, Hinduism, which is Shintoism. Japan
Hmm.
has that Japan has Shintoism, right? So there, the surprising thing about Shintoism is that they have Lakshmi, Ganesh, and Lakshmi and Ganesh is there, but their names are different. But that's what they are. The Ganesh, the elephant, and this thing, that statue, but their names are different. And a lot of Japanese who practice Shintoism don't realize that, and they're all using the Siddhi script, which was introduced by Indians. So they don't a lot of Japanese people who practice Shintoism don't understand that all of this came from India, and they continue practicing it without realizing that it came from India. And there are monks in the temples, Shinto temples, that continuously, like, say these verses and recite mantras that come from the Siddhi script. So there was a documentary that got released, and they were talking about this, and a lot of people, they asked somebody there, do you realize that this is all actually coming from, came from India? And I was like, yeah, now people have understood that, yeah, this has all come from there. But for a lot parts of East and Southeast Asia, the practice of spirituality was because Japanese people think that it came from China. Everything from Japan came from China. Even Buddhism also came from China. But where did Buddhism come from before that? Came from India. But actually, from it came from Tibet. It didn't come from India actually. For the Chinese Han people, it came first to Tibet and then it came to China. So Tibet was the first, say, like country, or the Tibetans were the first group of people that learned Buddhism from Indians. You know, and
You
then
have learned a lot. You have studied a lot about this. I have no
yeah,
idea. I
yeah.
have never given much thought to this. You seem to have done a lot of research on this,
Yeah, I've
right?
done a lot of
Good.
research. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of things, like reading on this or like listening to these kind of things, because I found quite fascinating. Like there are these, there's like East and Southeast Asia is very fascinating, because even in Southeast Asia, if you think about it, there's this Angkor Wat. I don't know if you heard about this
Yeah,
place,
yeah. In Cambodia, yeah.
Cambodia. It's
Angkor
the
Wat. Yeah.
biggest Hindu temple in the world. The
Mm.
biggest. It's bigger than all the It's the biggest Hindu. I mean, even in Indians, like there's no Hindu temple that compares to that one. But then, how did that happen? Like, the fact that Hindu, when people, when especially during the Chola dynasty period, when the Chola Empire was there, people set sail and went to all these Southeast Asian countries, conquered them, and maybe they also got interested in Hinduism and then started practicing it and stuff. They had names like Sanjaya and all these. They have all these names like that in Southeast Asia. And in Cambodia they built that big temple over there, and for uh, at least for a solid like 500 to 1000 years they were doing that. Then obviously Islam came and changed the entire picture over there, the landscape in that place. But even now also, if you think about it, like Southeast Asia, the name Singapore, it comes from Singa, which is that the
Oh,
lion,
right.
no, that Singham, because they
Lion,
have
lion.
the lion is that sort of this thing. So I mean, there's a lot of influence, but then in India, the unfortunate thing is nobody has done a lot of research on this. Nobody like everybody
No,
looks
no.
too much for the
My,
West.
my theory is very simple. We are not able to answer who is Hanuman with a
Ha,
lot of confidence. Because
yeah.
they'll say, you're worshipping him. I believe Karl Marx once asked him, what do you think about Karl Marx? Because in India, there was a very good social system.
Mm,
And then the people as in India seem to be, there are kings there, there's a lot of wealth there. India was one of the richest countries.
mm.
Then he said, yeah, India, something seems to be correct in India. But the problem is they worship a monkey and an elephant and animals. So they have to be saved.
Oh,
Marx
okay.
said, Karl Marx. And that is why all the leftists are anti-Hindu.
Mm.
Leftist fellows, they won't accept because Karl Marx said this. This is the quote of Karl Marx. What Karl Marx said about Hinduism. But he understood the Indian economic system was very good. But he said they were worshipping some animals. So they
That's
have
what
to be
happens.
refined.
That's
They
what
have to be
happens when you
refined.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't understand the culture of a society, and then you speak only by just looking at the easiest thing, which
Their
is like,
lens.
yeah,
But
the
we should
wealth.
answer it back. If I say Hanuman stands for the devotional power in you, which is monkey like, it will
Mm,
jump today, you'll be interested in something, tomorrow, you'll be interested in something. But
mm,
you should be interested in your divine true self. That is Hanuman. You go there, put a vadamala, and try to hone your skin on devotion.
mm,
Tell this to a white man. They will love you for that. Oh, really? Because I remember many years back, I was meeting with one British chap in some one of these at DNV used to go and hobnoble with
mm.
that. So he came and said, okay, Hindu and all. I was in Malaysia, there these fellows come. I was talking about that ceremony on which they poke that that spear through the this thing. It is called Taipusam. in
Hmm.
I don't know, there is a Murugan temple in Sri Lanka, in
Cambodia,
Malaysia,
Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Hmm.
So then I listened to him and all and said, yeah, this is common because that is because these devotees are trying to satisfy the Lord of Courage. The Lord of Courage is Kartigeya, and they have to inflict them on wounds and surpass the wounds to have courage. That they don't fear pain. They go beyond pain. That is why they pierce this, because they get into a this thing to. He was stunned for 2 minutes. Then after some time, he went somewhere else. Then he came back and said, "But nobody told me that this God stands for the God of courage." I said, yes, you please go. Now you go and look at everything. And because he was reading he was trying to do some Indology studies, on Muruga. I said, Muruga stands for, because there's nothing, if you want to go to Palani, you have to climb some 100 steps. This is not for the faint hearted fellow. You have to be a strong
Or
guy. You have to be full of courage.
Shabrimala.
Or Sabrimala. He's
Hmm.
also, Sabrimala is also
Ah.
similar to Murugan. He's about courage. So when I explained that, actually, that guy, I'm sure he must have gone and he already done a lot of studies, but that is because we are not defending our stories in their idiom. Instead of
I
that, we
think.
will, yeah,
But if we
because
waste our
these,
time, if we waste our time defending every single thing, no,
no, we
it
don't
will
have to
take
that. That is true. That is true. We should
it'll
not
take a
do that.
long time, like for them to understand, like
No, no, they will say Pushpaka
uh,
Vimanam came there. We were flying. Where is the evidence of it? There's no evidence.
hmm,
Maybe there was no Pushpaka Vimanam which could fly. It was just
hmm,
I don't know. We don't know. Nobody has seen a Pushpaka Vimanam which can fly. Or there
hmm,
is a Vimanam that can fly. We don't know. Or there is mind travel. We don't. No theory, no proof.
hmm.
So you
But
can't keep on defending every stupid thing also. I agree with you. Because a lot of
yeah,
these BJP fellows are doing that. They're saying, oh, no, no, India discovered this many years back and all those things without any proof. Then you'll become ridiculed.
yeah,
So this is a big problem of defending. Defending.
hmm.
Recently, there was one. I don't know whether you are aware of it. There was recently one. This thing of what is it? Demolishing the Hindutva, or something like that in the U.S.
The demolish or the yeah, I know what you're talking about. There was this movement or something, no, that the
One
conference,
week, some seminar
Hindutva
conference,
demolishing Hindutva conference or something like that, was it, no?
global Hindutva or something like that.
Global, yeah.
So many people came against it, and
Hmm.
finally, they didn't. I don't know what happened really, but now Indians are not taking back. Read many third generation American people, saying this is not acceptable. So Indians have started standing up, which is my opinion is good, but first we have to have a good appreciation of our own culture, which we
Hmm.
don't.
But like if you think about it, like let's come back to like spirituality. I think we'll
We went into mythology.
mythology and all that stuff. We talked about all kinds of things. But like so like we were talking about Hanuman, and you were saying that um that your faith in Hanuman was restored after a point, and like so one thing that I've always wondered is like this, like praying to a god, no, like we have multiple gods. Now if you listen to the Gita, if you listen to Gita, they will say that that to pray you're supposed to pray only to Krishna. And if you listen to like like I asked this question to Supriya Chechi, and she said that it's fine, you can pray to any god, because it's about you first trying to relate to that person, to get to a sort of a state where you can you have to feel comfortable in in the first place. So it's fine even if you don't pray to Krishna, or if you don't pray to say the ultimate supreme being. He's supposed to be the supreme being. It's fine if you pray to Hanuman. It's fine if you think Ganesha is like the god for you. It's fine if you think even Ayyappa is the god for you, or Murugan is the god for you, or Shiva is the god for you, whoever it is. Because in the end, like you are supposed, that is your, you are, there's a natural like bonding that's formed between you and this god, and that you should never try to get rid of. Because so just because you pray to god, because there's this one part in the Gita where Krishna says that if you pray to all other demigods, it's like you will get liberation, but you'll only get to heaven. Like, you'll get to like Swargaloka or something like that. You'll get to heaven, you'll enjoy all the things, but you won't get to like Vaikunta, which is like the ultimate place that I come. Because if you think of me constantly, then you'll get to that place. So, in that sense, like, but then, so this thing was always like, I had a doubt, like, this with this idea, like, so in that case, like, we have all these gods, which god are we supposed to actually pray? Even if like I like Hanuman a lot, am I still supposed to am I supposed to abandon that and pray to Krishna? So she said, no, that's not how it is. Like, if you have a deep connection with Hanuman, then you should pray to Hanuman itself. And don't worry about anything else and all stuff, which kind of made me like feel a bit better. I was like, okay, if I can like
No. Very good question. Actually, a very deep question. What you're saying is a very
uh,
deep thing. Actually, you studied management, right? You have
mm,
studied the concept management by objectives,
yeah, but I forgot about
Yeah,
this.
you forgot. Basically, basically, a company will set some goals.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I want
Uh,
profit. I want customer satisfaction. I want market share. Various things
mm,
you put. Okay. Then you work towards that one goal. It's the same concept. I want courage. I will go to Murugan. I want intelligence. I want to remove all obstacles in my this thing. I go to Ganesha. I want devotion to so that I stay steadfast in my course. I'll go to Hanuman. So you go for that and that particular point of, or you want wealth, then you will go to Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi.
yeah.
Or you want learning, you will go and pray to Saraswati. So you have got enough options to go and focus your this thing. That's all. But at the overall thing, you have to be at the biggest level, highest level, which is Krishna or Shiva or
Mm.
whatever you think. Shiva is also equally important.
Shiva's, I don't know, like, some people say he's the equivalent of Vishnu, but I don't know. Some people also say that he worships Vishnu. So what do you
No,
think
no,
about that idea? Like,
no, no,
I
no,
don't.
no. You see, it's very simple.
Hmm.
Now, Shiva is a god of regeneration.
Hmm.
Regeneration means that you had some blemish, let us say. You have eliminated that, and then you have surpassed it. So you're a new person. For that, to destroy that, whatever your this thing was, you need Shiva. Shiva will come because Shiva will come and really finish that whatever blemish you have. You know, that dark side you have, Shiva or Devi and all these people. That's how this concept works.
Hmm.
They will come and help you to annihilate that. Then you will regenerate yourself. So he is a god of regeneration. While sustenance is the Vishnu, he
Vishnu.
will sustain. He'll sustain your goodness, and he will also do some. He will also help you to overcome all the Duryodhana type of characters and all within you. So these are all in a contextually it is relevant. But finally, what I said, the most important thing was what I mentioned in my last this thing, where Shankaracharya said that please give me a vision of you so that I can see you in every other human being.
Oh.
Jagannath Ashtagam, because everybody is divine. So if that is the highest, that that you will see the divinity in everybody, whether they are
Hmm.
Hindu, animal, anything, Christian, Muslim, nothing. So that is the ultimate thing. But to reach that path, you will have certain goals. So you want right now, whatever you be your goal, Hanuman is always a universal God because it's about devotion. You have to be devoted to have some material advantage. And at some point of time, you want to just sing bhajan and be there. There also Hanuman is also he'll sing bhajans and be there. So Hanuman is a universal God. So that is how I have now no problems with Hanuman. So, in
But
fact, I love
hmm.
it.
Because the thing is, Hanuman is probably the most like, he doesn't care actually, what people say. Like, that
Yeah,
that is something that I kind of like about Hanuman, in the sense that he's very childlike, and he's like, he doesn't give up, like, whoever's coming, like, he's like, oh, should I pick up the mountain, the Himalayas in my hand and bring it back? I'll do that, fine, I'll
yeah,
go there. Like, and then, he's like, he goes to that kingdom, and then he's like, he
yeah,
plays around with everybody there. He tells,
yeah,
people there, Ravan tells him, who do you think you are, and all, like, I'll show you. And then he's like
Yeah,
a joker basically. He's like a
yeah,
comedian actually. He goes back or goes outside, and then he just like
yeah, yeah,
lets everything on fire. And he can actually defeat Ravan if he wants, and he
yeah,
can defeat him if he wants.
yeah,
But he understands that it's not his dharma to do it. It's
yeah,
Ram's dharma. It's Ram's dharma to do it, which is also quite fascinating. It's like the idea that if something is not meant for you, even if you can do it, like you should always be like willing to accept that it's not your place to do it. Like for instance, like like somebody who's worked for, let's say, 20, 30 years, like you for example, versus somebody who's worked for, let's say, like maybe 5 to 10 years only, who has a limited amount of experience on something, right? Comparatively, I'm saying, to comparatively. Now that in that kind of situation, like maybe the guy who's 5 to 10 years also can handle the same amount of work that you're doing. Because you have worked for a long time, you deserve that kind of uh, that particular job. You deserve that kind of work. And because you've earned that, because you worked for so long, you earned this kind of work. So I think in that sense, like it's that also something that you can learn from that, which is that it's trying to tell you that you should understand like what is your place. Like I mean, everybody can, like if you were given the job to sit in a desk and told, okay, these are the things you do, I'm sure a lot of people will be able to do that job. A lot of people could like pick up the job and do it. But why is it only some people are getting it? Why is it that only some people get a specific type of job that pays well, which you can sit in a company and you can very good amount of money and all that? Why is it that? Because they've worked hard for it. They've earned that they've earned that place, and that is why they're in that position. Just because you do it, just because you can do it, that doesn't mean that you have to do it. So I think that's also a thing. Like Hanuman could do the same thing that Ram did, but he didn't want, like, it's not his dharma. It's not his dharma to do it. Like
You
it's
see
not
that,
his
what you're saying, okay, Hanuman, you can relate to that maybe, but it is about being contented with whatever you
content with
have.
what you have. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can keep on aspiring, feel miserable about it, So
Mm.
we may not get it. So you have to learn to be contented, which is the fundamental principles of. I don't know whether Bhagavad Gita somewhere it says be contented, because that is what in Bhajagovindam, one of the main lines is that be contented with what you earn. Try to live with what you earn. Don't aspire for unnecessary things and be discomfort. Be unhappy. That is the crux of the Bhajagovindam. And then they say worship Krishna, don't do on grammar. I think that Bhajagovindam, I have got the full translation in my
Mm.
channel, or the full thing. And it's a very simple thing, very important thing, because at the end of the day, you must be contented. That's all. You can be somebody else. You are not somebody else. Be happy with your unique self.
Mm.
This is very important, because at the end of the day, what is it that you are seeking? You see, for me, okay, now I have nothing. Okay, now I want my software to be great, all that stuff. But I'm not really that bothered. But okay, since I've spent 7 years trying to build one, I don't want it to be a flop.
Mm.
So, and now you hear about some Freshworks got 12 billion valuation. Okay, one fine 2 minutes I'll think, Arey, why I can't be Freshworks? Then I'll think, I am not going to be Freshworks for sure. So it's fine with me. But my software, when I started my software, all I wanted was somebody said, oh, this is a great software. Why nobody thought about it before?
Mm.
That's all I started off. When I started off, I only wanted a few people who will use this, say, this is a smart piece of software. And we spent a lot of effort and time on it. That's all I wanted. But then you suddenly get on the way, you become a little greedy, you become a little
Mm.
unrealistic. Then you have your problems.
One thing
Then
we
you become
didn't,
discontent.
one thing we didn't speak about, which I want to get your opinion on, is Prakriti, which is the material nature of uh, the world, basically. Like,
See,
what
that
what
is
is
all too
your?
much of theory.
Mm.
You see, basically, what I understood, I don't know much, but I will tell you what I understood. There
Mm.
are three modes. There
Mm.
is this tamas, rajasic, and sattvic.
Mm.
I think I'm sure Supriya Ji will give you a better
Yeah.
explanation of that. But basically, this is there in all of us. Someday you will get up, you will be struck by tamas, which means laziness,
Mm.
indolence. someday you will be very peaceful, happy, and calm and contented. Someday you will be very aggressive,
Hmm.
rajasic. Okay, this is there in everybody in various shades. Now, what they say for your spiritual development, the sattvic mentality is very good. But suppose I am in business in my current job, you're a soldier. What is expected is not a peaceful philosopher. You have to go and act, climb this thing. You have to be a commando or whatever. I was listening to uh, Anil
Yeah.
Uncle, who was a commando. Actually, he never mentioned that. I was really surprised because I used to admire him for having been in the selected to be a commando at
Yeah.
that time. Because very few people get selected as a commando, but he did never even mention that as a high
Yeah.
point in his career. So,
Okay.
those days I know to be selected to be a commando, whatever that something it was called,
Uh,
was not easy. Very few people in the army get selected, to be that, And then he quit all that. He had to get presidents, this thing, but he never mentioned a word of it. He never thought it was great. While
mm,
all of us had a great regard for Anil Uncle because of that commando
mm,
selection he got. But
uh,
this varies for people.
uh,
So what I'm trying to say is that this changes along, but these basic modes are there. That also changes along your life. When I was, ship surveyor, I used to be very, physically fit. Your papa was. Now all of us have become little old, little laid back. It doesn't matter much. All of us have changed. So that happens. We slowly started forgetting things. So that aging will take place. But Prakriti, it's a little bit of a philosophical stuff, which is scientific and all, but actually it doesn't nothing in the life except that you should know your mood, be
yeah.
happy.
Be
That's
happy.
all. I don't think I never gave too much of importance to all these theory of Hinduism, which is there in the Bhagavad Gita is full of that. Also, for those people who want to know that. But
But
I don't know
yeah.
whether it's really very important. I don't know. I never found any use.
I think I feel like a lot of people, a lot of people say that, like, understanding the material nature is then understanding the spirituality. I think, like, if you understand that the material nature exists, then you'll understand what spirituality is, because materialism is what, I mean. You need materialism, otherwise you can't survive. Which I think the point we already made by now. You need materialism in this world, which otherwise you can't survive, and you can't just survive purely on spirituality. That's a given. You can't like meditate in front of in a forest for like days and days, because you'll die after a point. You need food, and how do you, and so the thing is, you need materialism, you do need that, but then you need that in balance, and the striking that balance is very important, and to figure out like how. And also, like, because the problem is that in today's world, a lot of people, like, they're so wealthy, but then they don't understand, like, they have no idea of what to do with the wealth. Like, you got Bill Gates and you've got all these famous you know rich people in the world and all that stuff, but they have no idea about how to, like, I mean, not like they don't have any idea, but then it's like, what do you need that much of wealth? Is in this world, when you don't have that kind of that spiritual background or that foundation or something, it becomes very difficult to kind of. So that's the basic thing, yeah. Then yeah, that's it. Is there
But
anything?
there was another question I think I heard from you.
Huh.
What is the role of free will or something? But I didn't fully
Free will.
catch the answer. You
Huh.
were asking this question to Supriya Chechi about
Huh.
free will.
Huh.
What was the answer? What did you understand? I also want to know
Actually,
what
I
was the
have to go
conclusion
back
you
and
got.
have to go back and listen to that again. I don't remember because, like, because my understanding of free will was like, one thing, I guess, like, what I was trying to ask her was that people who are, like, in all of this, no, God comes and tells you, like, Krishna telling Arjuna in the end, what is the point of me telling you all this? Like, there's no
Hmm.
point. Like, I'm telling you all this, the soul is within you, all the stuff I'm telling you,
Yeah, yeah.
talking to about karma and all these things that I'm telling you. But what is the point of telling you all this if you don't do it in the end?
Hmm.
So that, to me, in the end, no, was something great that God
Yeah.
has, which is that even despite all of this, like, God is still telling him that you still have the choice to choose. Maybe you still have the choice to decide what you want to do. Do you want to go like this? If you go like this, then this will happen. If you go like this will happen. So God is like, even in that situation, God is telling that person, you still have the choice to decide what is going to happen, which I thought was like, I don't see that in anything else. Like, I don't see that in most other like religions, for example. They don't tell you that, it's usually God is coming to like send you to hell, by doing this, or God is like trying to purge you and, put you into like purgatory and stuff like that and all that. All these things are there, and you don't ever hear that God is actually allowing you to decide what you want to do. Like, God is telling you, like, it's up to you to decide. I've told you what is the truth. I've told you everything. It's up to you to decide whether you like it or not. If you like it, okay. If you don't like it, fine. No issues. I'll still, God is still telling you, like, if you don't like it, I will still have love and respect for you despite all of that. So that to me in the end, no, was like, wow, that's a very good way of ending the Gita, because there's no other, because like I feel like, you could have ended it by the best way to end the Gita would, I mean, the other way to end the Gita would be like Krishna telling Arjuna that this is how you do it. And then Arjuna is like, I have no other choice. But then I have to do this. But Arjuna does have a choice in the end. Even after Krishna tells him everything, he still has the choice. Krishna still telling him like, yeah, you have the choice. You decide what you want to do. And Arjuna chooses that, okay, I will fight. I will fight, and I will, I'll have to do it because what he's saying does make sense and all stuff. So yeah. So I mean, that I guess that's the thing that I was asking her. That's the thing I was asking her about,
Yeah,
asking
okay.
her about.
I think this is a very
Yeah.
interesting. I think we should have it in another this thing
Yeah, yeah, sure,
about
sure,
the
sure.
role of free will. You know,
Free will, yeah.
I'm also interested to talk more about it because it's not that black
Hmm.
and white.
Hmm.
Because there is more things in the Mahabharata. You read more of the Mahabharata, ending of the Mahabharata. We can have
Huh.
one conversation on the ending of the Mahabharata,
Ending of the
and
Mahabharata. Okay.
yeah,
That
and
about the dog and them all passing away.
not only
That
that, even before that, how Duryodhana is killed.
killed that part. Okay, okay.
How, yeah, that part, how the
Hmm.
Mahabharata ends.
Huh.
We should
Okay,
have a
okay.
talk on that. And
Yeah,
then,
we'll do that.
because,
Yeah.
because it is, doesn't go with Arjuna just fighting the war or not, it is
Yeah,
only
yeah.
the beginning of it. It is, goes on further.
Hmm.
So,
We should talk
so
about that.
Mahabharata is such a complex thing, you have to read it. I must also read it. So, but I know it's very complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
it
true.
is
That's true.
not that God has told you at whatever Krishna says, I'll take care of everything. But there is at some point he'll intervene.
Hmm. That's true. That's true. Yeah, we'll talk
So
about it at some point.
yeah,
Okay, next
yeah,
time.
yeah. Sure,
So,
sure.
anyways,
Because
thank
I
you
want
so
to
much,
take that.
Ramesh. Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
it's a
Ramesh,
very
for
long
coming
one.
on.
Please edit it. Please
Yeah,
edit
yeah,
it.
sure, sure, sure.
And I don't think